Okay. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Broadcasting live from Columbia Hospital, from Jessica's hospital room, with our little baby boy sitting just a couple feet away. I hope everyone is doing well. We uh, apologize for pushing this off, and I'm glad we are able to start this now. We're not going to be able to do the full hour and a half, 2 hours that I wanted to do, but we can still do in a good, while of questions and answers and things of that sorts. So you should feel free to ask questions. If we can ask questions via email, you can ask questions on the chat. All of those are fine. My assumption, and by the way, I apologize if I'm looking at my phone just because it just stuff is happening, and I just have to keep up with some stuff. So if you have questions, feel free to, you should push them through the chat, push them through the email. You guys have the essay question. So the essay question, the expectation now is that you guys should be able to work well with the essay question, that you should be able to answer it, that you should be able to give me a pretty solid and a fairly substantial answer. I think it's a very straightforward question. I'm not going to take questions on it. So you should focus on that. So let's look at some questions. Okay, why were the Sui important from Isaac? So the Sui dynasty is sort of the connection between the Han dynasty dynasties. So from the fall of the Han dynasty in 220 CE until 589 or so, there was no controlling dynasty in China. Sui in 589 rise to create this dynasty. It was basically, the Sui dynasty provided stability to much of China. Lowering taxes, established stable food supply, began to construct the Grand Canal, and what this did basically was it put China on a future path, and so it allowed the Tang and the Song dynasties to really pick up on what the Sui dynasties were doing, and then move on from there. Okay. Good. I'm not going to give you examples of questions tonight. You've taken the previous tests. I'm not going to give you examples of questions. Okay. Okay, Rachel, when it says Western European Jews outside of feudalism, does it mean that Jews who weren't peasant soldiers? So Jews were not part of the feudal relationship in any way, shape, or form, nor were they soldiers or peasants. Jews were not part of the feudal relationship because they couldn't be. Jews could not take oaths, and so from this regard, they could not be a vassal. They could not take an oath of loyalty to a lord. At the same time, Jews weren't peasants. They weren't working on the land. They weren't working on the Lord's lands. They were largely either, for at least the 1100s or so, artisans, craftsmen making things. But as the Middle Ages rolls on and as guilds become bigger, meaning organizations of people coming together, we really don't talk about guilds, but Jews are not allowed to be craftsmen, and they largely become moneylenders, and that's what they basically do. Hope, do we know specific dates? Again, you need to know general. For most of the things, you need to know general dates, and so that's. You need to know general dates. In terms of specific dates, the big items. The big items are what you should be focusing on. So like Magna Carta is a big item. The English, the Norman, the conquest of England by William of Normandy. Those things. Okay. Let's see. From Noah, were the fighting pagan tribes living in Medina? Yeah, they were living around Medina. That's who Muhammad was coming to help, basically, in coming to Medina and issuing the Constitution of Medina. And yes, you need to know the five pillars of Islam. Um, how important is the Marxist model of feudalism? You need to know the general parameters of what the different models of Marxism are. First of all, again, both models of feudalism that we talked about. You need to know the both the Marxist and the Anglo-American. Just you have to know what they are. I'm not going to ask you in the test sort of to apply that model to a real life example. And I understand feudalism is a difficult topic. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but that's generally what I ask you to. Again, that's what you need to know in terms of the different models of Marxism. So, Miri, you're correct. You don't need to know about every detail of every element of the Chinese dynasties. No, you don't. The questions are some of the questions are more specific, and some of them are broader. So, okay, okay. When you saw Meccan leaders turned into Muhammad powerful tribes, does that imply that Muhammad became a lot more powerful during the Medina to the pagan? Again, the pagan tribes. Remember, the way that Muhammad comes to Medina is through being invited by the pagan tribes. Muhammad was gaining a reputation in Mecca. And so it was important. So then they saw Muhammad as a possible peacemaker, and they turned to Muhammad, asking him to try to work out a peaceful resolution. Okay, and so Muhammad has invited the pagan tribes to come and to help. Can I further explain the Great Schism and how it affects change? That's from Joseph. Can you be a little more specific? Which Great Schism are we talking about? Are we talking about the Great Schism of the 11th century, or are we talking about the Great Schism of the 15th century? Okay. Do we need to know the Second through the Eighth Crusades? No, there's nothing on the test about the Second to the Eighth Crusade. We talked just in terms of the only thing you should know is the Third Crusade being the King's Crusade. That's all you should really know. Evan, in terms of Tang and Song dynasties, there's a lot of, as opposed to differences, there are a lot of continuities between the Tang and the Song dynasties. When we talked about them, we actually talked about them more continuously than showing differences. So when we talked about the Tang and Song dynasty, we really talked about a lot of the similarities, a lot of continuities between the two. So you can think about the Tang and the Song very similarly to each other. I would also just repeat what I said on the review sheet. You do have a choice in regards to the reading and in regards to the short answer questions. When you write the short answer questions, please make sure to keep it short. You don't need to write a lot. You need to show me that you know what you're talking about. You don't need to give me every single piece of information that you have. Okay. Who was unified in the Arabian Peninsula by Muhammad? Meaning the Arabian Peninsula itself was united. Before Muhammad, there was no single rule of the Arabian Peninsula. It was ruled by various tribes. What Muhammad did was he brought the Arabian Peninsula and then most of the Middle East and most of North Africa under a single ruler, a single leader. That's the important aspect. How did Chinese compare to the Europeans? Do they trade with each other? Is China? Yes, China is where the Luana came from. They do trade with each other through the Italian city-states that we talked about. So they do play a role. Okay, so Joseph, the 14th century. So the Great Schism, meaning the 14th century schism shows us is that the church was a breakable entity. What we have with the 14th century schism is that what it shows is that the church, the Catholic Church, is not a unified whole. That there is a very clear break. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, sorry. So the fourth. Sorry. Okay. the 14th century, again, it shows that the Catholic Church was not a unified whole under one pope, that there could be two, even three popes who claimed legitimacy as the leader of the Catholic Church. And that basically showed Europeans that the church is not this what's called infallible, this pure, this without sin, without um, um, institution, that there are some very, very big issues with it. And one of those issues was this structural problem. And so yeah, that's the significance of that. Okay, a lot of questions here. Hopefully we can get to most of these. The Mongols considered a Chinese dynasty? Yes, they are. What are the differences between the Great Schism? Again, one is the internal, meaning what we have with the two differences is that the 11th century Great Schism leads to a break between the Western and Eastern churches. Interesting. I should take a look at that. And so the 14th century Great Schism was within the church itself. That's the major difference. The 11th century leads to a break within the church, creating Eastern and Western churches, and the 14th century is an internal break itself. Okay. Okay. What are the differences between the Great Schism? Difference between Tang and Song dynasties. Again, Rachel, we talked more about continuities and differences and changes. You need to know about the artworks that we discussed in class very briefly. In terms of hope in your question, in terms of the general aspects of the Italian Renaissance art, you need to know the general parameters of the Italian Renaissance art that we talked about, the general characteristics, the feelings, that's what you need to look at. Guys, try to keep sort of factual questions out. Again, look, if you don't know what the concordance of Worms is, or Lord Vassal and Fief, look back at your notes. Let's try to keep to less factual questions here. Okay. Yeah, Evan, you're right. We did talk about the Tang and the Song, is that they had same accomplishments. Yeah, again, we talked about the fact that you're right. There are a lot of continuities between the Tang and the Song dynasties. We really didn't talk about the differences. That's something we should focus on. So yeah. Okay. Were the Europeans interested in becoming great empires like there were in China, or were they content with fragmentation? That's a good question, Mary. So that the Europeans understood that they were not able large-scale empires like the Mongols were in China. So what we see is sort of a shrinking of European empires from Rome to the Carolingians under Charlemagne, and even further smaller under his grandchildren. Okay. Good. Let's see. Is Islam included in European Middle Ages? Because no, it's a separate topic than the European Middle Ages. You need to know all the 5 pillars of Islam. Yes. Why did the Abbasids want to conquer Assyria? I'm not understanding the questions. It's not a matter of wanting to conquer Assyria. It's a matter of who is in charge. And it's not Assyria, it is Syria. Syria is a different empire. So I'm not sure what you mean with the Abbasids. Okay, let's see. You have to know all the Talmudic commentaries, the commentaries that we talked about, meaning what we discussed in class, so you should know. Okay. I'm not gonna. Okay, guys. Some of you are asking questions 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to answer questions 3 or 4 times. This is the last time I'm gonna ask this. know all 5 pillars of Islam. I'm not going to say it again. You need to know all 5 pillars of Islam. What is the Islamic relationship with Jewish tribes, good or bad? So that's something we talked about in terms of there's a real development of the relationship between Muhammad and the various Jewish tribes. We talked about the fact that he first had a good relationship, and seemingly over the course of his life, it went from a pretty good relationship to, by the time Muhammad was getting towards the end of his life, to a pretty bad relationship. We also talked about the fact, though, that the Jews are recognized by the Pact of Umar as having specific rights. And we talked about the fact that they're regarded as that they're given certain rights that non-Muslims who have a specific they're monotheistic, they get a certain recognition. So that's what is the case with the Jews. Okay, Joseph, guys, you have to. I'm not going to answer questions again. Ask them once and you'll get the answer. If you don't hear it, then I probably answered it before, and go back and listen to the previous part of the review. Okay, additionally, in the reading, it mentions that the Renaissance being seen in the plural. Do we need to know different renewals throughout Europe? No. We taught what we will be discussed in class. Okay. All right, what else is out there? What is the importance of Sharia? We talked about, did we talk about, I don't think we talked about Sharia. The only thing we talked about Sharia is that Sharia is law. That's what Sharia is. Sharia is Islamic law. That's all we discussed. And that's all the important aspect of it. Okay. How does jihad struggle between Dar al-Islam and how does jihad struggle between Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Arab? No, I don't understand the question. Do we need to know the different groups of Islam, like Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Arab, Dima, Jihad, what they believe? Yeah, but Evan, Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Arab are not groups of Islam. You need to know the groups of Islam. You need to know Sunni and Shia. You need to know those. Someone's picking up. You need to know Sunni and Shia. You need to know Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Arab, the House of War, the House of Islam. You need to know Dima. You need to know all of that stuff. What was the importance of the Four Lateran Councils? The Four Lateran Councils very basically showed that that the church was continuing to gain power. What's up? Was continuing to gain power. Was continuing to assert power. Was able to show very simply that it was in charge. That the church creates these meetings and has these meetings, holds these meetings in order to show that it is in charge, that it has the power, it has the responsibility, it has the control, that it can legislate laws, it can create laws, and then therefore it can, and then the expectations that these laws are going to be followed. Okay. How did Yangdi's assassination lead to the downfall of the Sui dynasty? I mean, he was assassinated, and in his place, the minister of Yangdi was able to take Li Wan was able to take his place. So it's very, very simple. I mean, he was assassinated, and someone else takes over. Okay, let's keep moving on. Okay. Sorry? Yeah. Also being fussy. Okay. Okay. What else? Blah, blah, blah. Should we focus on the roles of each group in the clergy, or just focus on the church? Meaning, you need to know the focus of on the clergy, the groups in the clergy. Yeah, you need to know that, sure. Should we focus on the roles of each group in the clergy, or just focus on the church as a whole? Yeah, you should focus on both. It's not mutually exclusive. Do you need to know Selberg's perspective on Jews in the Middle Ages? He said in terms of Carmelos anti-Lacrimos, yes, absolutely. What order did the Kharsang Tang? First, it's the Sui dynasty, and after the Sui dynasty is the Tang dynasty, and after the Tang dynasty is the Song dynasty. Who are the people who were hosted by non-Muslims for the Pact of Umar? I don't understand the question, Evan. You can repeat that. I don't understand the question. Yes. Does he have a diaper? Okay. Can the Sui dynasty be compared to the Marxist model of feudalism because they are both related to communism? I don't understand how the Sui dynasty is related to communism. So, meaning in terms of, does he have a diaper? Yeah. Do you want help? Oh, okay. Yeah, I may have to go in 1 second, guys, for a quick thing. Meaning the Sui dynasty had what we call the land equalization system, that they redistributed lands. You're gonna hear the new baby crying a little bit. So don't worry. Again, the Sui dynasty had what's called the land equalization system. They redistributed land to people to make sure they had enough. That's what they had. Okay. Let's see. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not communism though. So, and neither is the Marxist model of feudalism. They're not communism. Sorry, he's getting his diaper changed. If you hear crying, it's little baby boy. A big one, Jess? Okay. Okay. Do I know if I'm going to be in school to answer questions? I might not be. I'm not going to. I don't know. It's a possibility. I will try to be in school for the exam. You shouldn't have any real questions on the exam itself. It's fairly clear. So yeah. In the Pact of Umar, said that the non-Muslims agreed to host regulations in return for protection. Who were they hosting? It was Christians. That's who they were. It was Christians. Okay? It was Christians. That's who it was. What is the monastic community? We talked about monasticism in regards to monasticism is the Christian idea of walling oneself off from society. A monastery is a place where Christians can go, where they wall themselves off from from society as a whole. We talked about the rule of Saint Benedict, Benedictine monks. They live within the community. They live within this enclosed community, away from society as a whole. That's what monasticism. We talked about the rule of Saint Benedict. We talked about the various aspects of monasticism, also, and what the rule of Saint Benedict was. Okay, what else do we have here? All right, what else do we have here? What other questions do we have? What other questions do we have? What other questions? More questions. Let's see. Questions. Other questions here. Other questions. Is this final going to be extremely hard or just a little bit? No, it's going to be impossibly hard. Clearly the goal of the final is for everyone to fail, because that makes me happy. No, the final is very, very fair. The final is going to assess how your understanding of information is. Okay. What does it mean? Augustine says. What does it mean? Augustine says that if you go on crusade, you will be justified. Well, what Augustine provides for is a justification of the crusade, right? Because you go on a crusade, the goal of the crusade is a holy war. You go on crusade, sorry. You go out on crusade. Crusade is a holy war. In a holy war, you're supposed to kill. Is murder, which you can't do. But Augustine says if you're going out to fight a holy war, it is not considered murder. Did we consider the crusade successful? Does this make sense because the Pope removed himself and they never got power over Jerusalem? They never gained control of the Byzantine Empire. Well, remember they did. Hi, Chloe. Thanks. I'm glad you crashed the party. The first crusade was a success. It was success. It was a success, even though it was strange that it was a success because there was no centralized leadership. There's no centralized army. There's no central individual leading the cause. They did gain control over Jerusalem. They did create a crusader state. So all of this was strange, given that. Bless you. Given that it was very strange that they were able to do this, but they were. Is an emperor king, an emperor institution of Clarendon accomplish? It was a challenge by the king to the complete control of the church in England, or not control of the church, but it was an effort by the King of England to impede on the power of the church. Okay. Okay, Tamira, Chloe, guys, thank you. You guys should add that because I only have another about 10 or 15 minutes left or so with the freshmen. So we need to try to answer as many questions as we can. Where was the children's? Don't worry about the children's crusade. Don't worry about the children's crusade. Okay. There's no about the two disputations separately or just what they are. No, you need to know the general parameters of what the disputations are. Heresy disputation, what the code. The fact that in the eyes now of the church, it was the Talmud that was elevated to have a position of power as opposed to the Bible itself. In terms of Barcelona, understand Nachmanides, the Ramban, and his role in it. You have to understand the general parameters. Sorry about the computer. You have to know the general parameters of the different disputations the two disputations that we talked about. So you know how to compare and contrast all the rabbis we learned. You need to know who they are. So I don't ask you to compare necessarily Rashi to Tosfot or Rashi to Ramban, but no, you should know what they do to think about their general approaches. Okay. Why did Emperor Sigismund call on John? John himself was part of the conflict. Isn't the council supposed to be neutral? No, clearly wasn't. No, clearly they were trying to settle the issue, and that's all they were supposed to do. So no, it's not strange. What does it mean that there was a bond in the Anglo-American feudalism? Remember, the point of the Anglo-American feudalism is to establish this relationship between lord and vassal as a bond. It's a relationship between these two. That's so the dynamic of the feudal relationship, the dynamic of feudalism itself is this relationship. Okay. All right, Samir, Chloe, guys, we have just a couple more minutes left. I want to try to get to as many questions as we can. By the way, bris for baby boy Zadolf on Sunday, God willing. Hebrew Institute of Riverdale.
5 extra points if you get and the entirety.
Sure. Davening's at 8:30. Bris is afterwards, so about 9:10 or so. Other questions? Other questions? Yeah. Joseph, don't worry, you're going to pass. You have the essay question already. The essay question is 40% of the test. There's absolutely no reason why all of you should not get a perfect score on the essay. You have the essay question. The essay question is tremendously valuable. You know exactly what the essay question is going to be. That's great. What is a primary source? Colin saying defining the name of God. That's what we talked about. Yes, you need to know the primary sources. You need to know the general approach. That was the primary source in which we talked about the different way that historians talked about the understanding and interpreting the Hebrew First Crusade Chronicles, the Hebrew First Crusade narratives. Isaac, if you're asking what a disputation is now, then you need to study. Disputations there are two disputations. We talked about public debates, public disputes between Jews and Christians, one in Paris, one in Barcelona. The essay question is so hard. The essay question is the essay question is very broad in general. The essay question basically allows you to say you have the entirety of the Middle Ages and decide what's the most important aspect of it. It's extremely broad, so you have a lot of power to it. Okay, well, let's see. What does it mean in theory the king stood at the top of the feudal network of personal loyalty and land's tenure? Well, it means exactly that. We talked about the fact that the king, in theory, is the king is on top of the feudal network because the king gives out all of the vassalages. But at the end of the day, the king is only while the king in theory is the top, he's the first really among equals because at the end of the day, he's giving out a lot of his lands. And in terms of actual control, most of the vassals control much more land than the king himself. So the king in theory stands at the top of the apex of the pyramid of the feudal pyramid. At the end of the day, he isn't because he doesn't have that much. He doesn't have that much power. Okay. Am I going to be in school on promotion day? Can you bring your baby? I could definitely not bring. Will then be our 9-day-old baby to school on promotion day. Okay. Yeah, sure. He's going to wear a vest. Absolutely. What? Yeah, I think so. Okay, is there a difference between a lordship and a vassalage? Yes, of course. The difference is that a lord is on one side and the vassal is on the other. That's the relationship. The relationship is between a lord and a vassal. The vassal gives to the king. The lord gives to the vassal. They both have different dynamics in this relationship. They're the opposite ends of the relationship. Okay. Are the disputations? Am I coming on? I don't know if I'm going to be there. I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm going to be in school on promotion day. We will see how things go. It's been a busy couple of days. It's only Monday, and This baby was born very, very early Sunday morning. So like 1:15, 1:16 Sunday morning. So it's been a very, very long couple of days. So we're going to get through one day at a time in terms of thinking about next week. Okay, why are the disputations important? They're important for different reasons. The Paris disputation is important because it showed, first of all, that remember it was instigated by a former Jew who had converted to Christianity, writing a letter to the church, basically saying to the Pope, that the Jews value the Talmud much more than they value the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh. And the Talmud is put on trial in Barcelona. It's some of the fundamental ideas of Judaism that's basically put on trial, that the Ramban has to defend. Okay, guys. Again, don't worry about the sophomores. They're not taking up any of your time. Why were the Jews exiled from England? No, it doesn't have anything to do with the blood libel and ritual murder. It has to do with economic reasons that we didn't talk about. Okay, so don't worry about why they were exiled. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Let's see. We'll give this another. I don't know. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Let me just. My wife has to ask me a quick question. Guys, we're back. Okay. What should we know about the blood libels? You should know. First of all, you should know again what we talked about in class with what the blood libels are. We talked about a couple of examples of the blood libels. We talked about William of Norwich, the boy who was murdered, and Thomas of Monmouth. We talked about Hugh of Lincoln. Examples in England. Basically, it's England where the blood libels begin. It then got to the continent after it was in England for a while, but it started in England. And we talked about the fact that both kings and popes wanted to put an end to whether or not this was true. So both emperors, kings, and popes put it to the test to see exactly if this was true or not, and they both found that it was not. So it was not true. Okay. The essay, would you count the clergy and the Pope gaining and losing power as politics? It can be politics, sure. It can be, absolutely. Why would Charlemagne demand that Pope make him emperor? Because of what Charlemagne did for the Pope. That's why. Okay. Do we need to know what each Rishon did, or only who they are? No, you need to know what they did. Yeah, you need to know the general sense of what they did. Absolutely, yeah. No question about it. No question about it. Okay. Let's see what else. Whew. It's been a long couple of days, guys. It really has been. It's been a long couple of days. It's been long. Yes, because clearly it's I who did all the work with the baby. So, other questions. Can you plausibly ask us to compare the reading to our class notes, or are they simply comprehension questions from the reading? They're both. They're both. The majority of the questions are reading comprehension, but no, I can ask you to think about, think about the Middle Ages and compare to compare what we discussed in the Middle Ages to how the Italian Renaissance is being discussed in the piece. Absolutely. How's Olivia handling the new baby? So far, so good. She's happy to have gotten the presents that she's getting for this. So, no coffee. I'd like to sleep tonight, so no coffee, because if I have coffee now, it may push me. I want to try to get a couple hours of sleep tonight. So, yeah. Good. Other shaylots. Other shaylots. But king is better than emperor. No, meaning in different places they have different. Emperor and king can be used synonymously. They have different meanings in different places. So I wouldn't say one is better, one is not. So okay. Other questions? How about this? You're not going to get full-size chocolate bars, but if you come to the Briss, there's going to be a lot of good food at the Briss. Omelet stations um, and other a lot of other good stuff at the Briss. So no full-size chocolate bars, but if you come to the Briss, you'll get a lot of good food. Okay. What is the most important thing we should know about the Renaissance? That it happened. That's what you should know. That it happened. The Italian Renaissance happened. What you should think about the Renaissance, and this is sort of what the reading is talking about also, is whether the Renaissance really is something of a change, whether it marks something as a change. That's what you should. That's what you should. Look at. It's a new record. You got 4 likes. I know. Is a baby going to wear shoes with no socks? Clearly, obviously, we already practiced that with Olivia. So, right, that's true. He's also a summer baby, so it's going to. He's not going to be wearing socks. That's true. What's the difference between humanism and individualism? Individualism is a part of humanism. It's part of what humanism is focus on the individual as an individual. Individualism being that each individual has unique capabilities, that each individual person has unique talents to give. That's what individualism is. To me, the different works of art from the Italian Renaissance. From what I recall, I don't remember giving you a specific question on the exam about a specific work of art. So generally, you need to know what the focal point of the of works of art were in the Italian Renaissance. So what can an emperor do that king can't? Again, they're different. They're the same titles used in different places. So don't get caught up on these semantic differences. You come to the Briss, don't be surprised when you see me. That's fine. Yeah, I want everyone to come to the Briss. It's Sunday. It's Father's Day. It should be fun. I think the final word of this live stream shouldn't be saying good luck. It should just end with cheers. Okay, I'll try to remember that. Why was humanism so important? So again, the question is whether humanism was really important in the Middle Ages, whether in the Italian Renaissance, whether it marks a difference from the Middle Ages to the Italian Renaissance. Many would argue that the Italian Renaissance represents a shift in perspective, because whereas the Middle Ages was defined as this corporate identity, this corporate aspect, meaning everyone belongs to the same thing, everyone belongs to the same church, everyone belongs to the community, everyone is Christian, everyone is the same, everyone focuses entirely on religion all the time. What the Italian Renaissance begins to show is that isn't the case, that we have to realize and understand that each person has capabilities, and those capabilities are different. We don't have to focus entirely on religion. We can create works of art that extol, that celebrate nature. What is realism is the in terms of the Italian Renaissance is that it means that the artists are looking to depict the natural world around them, the real world around them, not just creating stylized images, but just looking at the world around them. Can you get a curve? You're not getting a curve. Why do you? You guys are going to do well on this exam. I have confidence that you guys are going to do well. You guys are getting very, very nervous, I think, over nothing. You guys are going to do well on this exam. It's important, but okay, let's just take another 2 minutes, and then we're going to wrap this up so I can help Jessica tend to our newborn, and then hopefully get some sleep. Any other last-minute questions to ask before we go? Okay. Again, I will try to be in school on Wednesday. I'm not going to guarantee it, just because who knows what's going to happen. So I just don't know. How was the Mr. Torah written for the masses? Good question, Mary. It was written for the masses because it was written, first of all, in easily Hebrew to understand. It was written not with many arguments going back and forth. It was written with a single perspective, a single decision. It was written in a very clear order, and so that's how it was made for the masses. I'm terrified by your essay. That all I can think about. Don't think about. Just focus on it. You have tomorrow. You have tomorrow too. Huh? So you have tomorrow to work on it. Work with each other. Write outlines. Write an outline together. You have the essay question. You know exactly what's going to be on the test at this point. So work on it together. Okay, guys. We'll end here. Have a great night. Again, I may be in school on Wednesday. I may not. We will see. Have a great night, everybody. Good luck studying, and cheers. See you, everyone. Bye.